Nice one, Andrew, nice one. That's a good one. And we're stuck up the tree again. That brings back a few memories, particularly being stuck up the trees. The tackle. How many of us used to fish with a little piece of garden cane and a bent pin for a hook? We've moved on a bit since those days. Fish is still the same, but the tackle's a little bit more sophisticated, particularly the poles. Let's pop along and see how they're made. Well, here we are up in Geordieland, Century Composites, one of Europe's leading pole manufacturers. And with me I have Simon Chilcock, Managing Director. And here, believe it or not, I have a piece of carbon fibre. Simon, please, what is carbon fibre?
Carbon fibre, Billy, is a material that was developed in England several years ago, and it is essentially very, very stiff and enables you to produce long, lightweight poles.
Simple as that?
Simple as that.
Any chance of seeing one being made?
Yes, I think the best thing to do is actually come into the factory and show you actually one being produced.
Lovely, thanks very much.
Okay.
Yes.
Essentially what we do here is we take carbon fibre, which is pre-cut out to an exact shape and pattern, and we then attach it meticulously to the mandrel. Billy, we're taking it the next stage on now. We're actually going to roll the tip round the mandrel. As you can see, they're spending quite some time making sure that the tip is accurately formed prior to rolling it around about 100 pounds per square inch. Right, Phil, let's see it roll. Right, Billy, the next procedure is to take the blank that we've just rolled and we're going to wrap it in polypropylene tape. Polypropylene tape is essentially like sellotape without the sticky. And wrapping this cellophane tape round the blank enables us to place it in the curing oven, which is the next process on, and that binds the resins inside the carbon fibre tightly and neatly into the blank. After the curing process and after the cellophaning process, this is removed quite simply by pulling it off like this. And that leaves those characteristic spirals up and down an Excalibur blank, or for the sake of argument, any particular fishing rod which is made on a similar sort of process.
Well, Simon, thanks very much indeed. That was a very interesting tour. Do you mind if I ask you a personal question? Something I'm quite sure most people would like to know. How come some poles can cost £400 or £500, yet a similar type of pole could be 100, 150? Is there a difference?
Well, yes, Billy. I mean, I differ with you very rapidly. A similar pole, they're not similar. The thing to remember is that these poles, particularly the Excalibur poles, are made from high-modulus carbon fibre. That's a very, very expensive but high-performance grade of carbon fibre found, for instance, in aircraft. If you were going to trust your life to an aircraft, you'd like to think the materials were fine, they were going to work, and you know it's going to fall out of the sky. Well, equally so, you're going to make a good investment inside a pole. You'd like to think the thing's going to work and perform at the levels you would expect of that type of price. That is the essential difference between a pole at £150 and a pole, say, between £500 and £600.
So really what you're saying is you get what you pay for?
More or less.
What about the backup side? That's very, very important. Supposing I trap my bottom section in a car door, apart from being painful, it's going to hurt my pocket. Will I be able to get a spare for it?
The important thing, as you've rightly stressed there, is to ensure that when you buy a pole, that backup spares are readily available. If you've spent this sort of vast amount of money on buying a pole, you've got to ensure that parts are readily available. And it's one of the first questions you should ask your dealer. What is his experience with the manufacturer in supplying parts?
Fine. Well, I've seen it made. I think the answer is to go out and try it.
Well, tight lines.
Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Well, here we are for our first location, deep in the heart of rural Leicestershire. Nice and handy really, about 10 minutes away from where I live. It's a little farmyard pond, typical of thousands of them up and down the country. No particular licence required to fish them, other than a local water authority licence and, of course, the farmer's permission, very important. I've never seen this pond before in my life, so I'll be able to tackle up today and hopefully present a complete A to Z picture of pole fishing for you. The pond in question is, what should I say, 30 yards across, maybe 15, 20 yards wide. And I can hear in the background now fish jumping and priming on the surface. I can see a lot of flies around, so possibly roach and rudd are taking the flies now. I've also noticed quite a bit of activity in the reeds. I'm quite sure there are some big carp moving around, possibly mirrors or commons, hopefully crucians, much more acceptable fish to catch on the pole tackle that I will be using. Right, now we've chosen our spot. I'm quite pleased with it. Gives me a nice bit of cover, both sides, weeds on my left, bush on my right, and I estimate 10-11 metres of pole to reach those rushes on the far side. An essential part of the pole fisherman's armoury is a pole roller. Simple little contraption. I believe they're first conceived similar to the old wallpaper come emulsion type roller. If I could find out how it slots together, I would demonstrate. Fit the two sections together, screw in a bank stick, simple enough, and now we have a beautiful contraption for rolling the pole along when we feed it back. Cost you a couple of pounds, in the long run could well save you hundreds of pounds. Simple little job. Slide the pole along, out of harm's way. If you look at the alternative, worse still, if you ram it behind into a brick wall, then you're talking of £100 per section. Well worth the investment. The first rule when pole fishing: wires. Make sure there are no wires anywhere around. What appears to be a harmless telephone wire could be carrying 11,000 volts. That spells death. Don't take the chance. The rest of the tackle, I think it's time to get our ground bait ready now. There we are. Simple enough, very finely riddled. I always riddle the ground bait. I don't want any big lumps. That way the fish can never become overfed. I'm looking for a cloud to attract the fish rather than to feed them. Now, over the last couple of years, I've been converted somewhat by one or two friends of mine who've been using Sensas ground bait. I don't really know why. It goes against the grain for whatever I've said about fishing in the past, but nevertheless, my results seem to have improved considerably. This is one of my favourites. It's the Sensas 2000. Probably the most popular one is the Sensas Magic. I like to use that sometimes on the canals, particularly if I'm after gudgeon. In addition to the ground bait, wherever I'm fishing, I like to loose feed. And I always want to be loose feeding whatever bait I'm using on the hook. And for the purpose of this exercise, I'm trying to make it as cheap and as simple a day's fishing as possible. And I expect to use no more than 30-40 pence worth of bait and ground bait in the whole of the afternoon session. I'm not going to use a maggot. I'm going to play it very, very simple. I'm going to fish with bread. And if I fish bread on my hook, I should be using Sensas cloud ground bait to attract the fish, and I want to get in a few bread samples. That's where this little baby comes in. It's called a multi-punch. Simple little contraption. It was in fact invented by a fellow who lives no more than 2 miles up the road here, a good friend of mine. It works something like this. You take a slice of bread, rub the multi-punch in it, press it, and out comes dozens and dozens of little bread particles. Ever so easy. I've just done a few now. I've been waiting. And here's the result of 2 minutes work and 5 slices of bread. And believe it or not, each little pellet sinks perfectly, swells in the water, and acts as an additional form of ground bait. Right, a nice simple mix first of all. Sprinkle Sensas, couple of ounces. Maybe just a small handful of dry brown ground bait, again finely riddled. We'll just add a little bit of water to it now. As I'm fishing a still water, I have no need at all for the ground bait to go down in a lump. I want it to break up on the surface, create a cloud. Fish in turn will be swimming into the cloud, investigating, and hopefully they'll be spying my hook bait. And just to make sure they know what they're looking for, I'm going to sprinkle 1 or 2 of the little bread pellets in with the ground bait. Now we'll just see how the cloud works on the side. Absolutely beautiful, a nice milky cloud, no problems. I think the fish should start moving into that very quickly. Again, I'll try the bread particles just to make sure they're sinking. Beautiful, everyone down. We're now ready to tackle up. This is what I use. It's an English-style float. I actually make them. It's the Canal Grey. Covers probably 95% of all still fishing that I ever have to do in this country. Tackle up, very, very simple. I don't even use pole winders. I have, of course, the elastic on the outside of the pole, as we've discussed before. I've tied the line onto the end of the pole. 1 yard from the end of the pole, I now set my float. And as I've said, it's a completely strange water to me. I have no idea at all of the depth. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to overestimate the depth. I'm going to set it probably 6 feet deep. And I'm going to weight the thing up, not with a plummet, with a shot. Pinch it on the line. Simple as that. As you notice, the shot is no longer lead for environmental reasons. There are now several substitutes on the market. The one that relates most closely to lead, I found, is the Sandvik Safe Weight. It's a little hinged shot. I believe it's made out of tungsten, completely non-toxic. The beauty of the thing, of course, is that it can be used over and over again without damaging the weight or damaging the line. There I have a swan shot on the line for use as a plummet. Stick my nail in, the thing is free. Put it back on again and I can use it hundreds of times. Now what I'm going to do, push the pole out to those weeds on the far side. I'm going to plumb the depth approximately. Put the pole in position, sliding nicely along the roller. Another quick check for wires. It's always something that concerns me quite a bit. Swing it out, and we shall now proceed to find the approximate depth. Look how smoothly the pole slides along with the back roller. Marvellous invention. Okay, we shall now lower this gently up against the weeds on the far side. Test the depth. The float virtually lays flat, so we are a little bit too deep. Pull it farther out towards the middle of the pond just to see if it starts to drop away. No, we're still too deep. I would estimate maybe 6-9 inches. I don't think. No, there the float started to drop away now. I've found a ledge. Probably about 5 feet away from those rushes, it starts to drop down to the to about 4.5–5 foot. Any speed you want. Wonderful invention. I'm quite pleased with that roller. Unclip the safe weight, back into the box, and we can use that devil for the next day. Now comes the business end of the tackle. As I've got a medium elastic on, medium to soft, I will not be looking for thick line or big hooks. It's only a little pond, there's really nowhere for big fish to go. I should be able to handle anything up to 2 to 3 pound on reasonable match tackle. The hook in question, all down to your own personal choice. I wouldn't advocate any one change in the tackle. My preference is for possibly the sharpest and lightest hook on the market, which is a Drennan Carbon Caster. 22s, it's a blued hook, micro-barb, which means your bait and the fish stay hooked, but they're very, very easy to unhook once you've got them in your hand. The line in question, I don't think you'll be able to see it. I have a job seeing it here now. It's 14 ounce Drennan double strength, and it's called double strength because it's twice as strong as anything else friggin' diameter. That must be an advantage. Another non-toxic shot, one of the smaller safe weight size, number 6. Clips ever so easily onto the line, and that is the simplest of all pole rigs. We're now ready to start fishing. We know exactly where the place is. I think it's over by those reeds. What we'll do now, make life a little bit simpler, is put the float out and we will make a nice simple target for which to ground bait. Lay the float on the water approximately 1 yard away from the weeds where I'm expecting to catch fish. Now we have a target. I'm going to lay the pole down ever so gently on the water, as far away from the float as I can without splashing. Lay it down ever so gently. Take my ground bait, and lo and behold, I have an absolutely perfect target on which to feed. Now we'll see how good my ground bait in is. Out goes the Sensas with a few dabs of bread on the hook. We'll see if I can land on my float. Not bad, maybe 12 inches. See if I can get it a little bit better this time. Six inches, getting a little bit better. I think that'll be enough for start. I'll just give it one more little drop. You notice it's forming a nice cloud all around the float. Much better, much better. Again, 6 inches, a little bit farther past the float. That's a lovely area. No need to feed anymore. I'm fishing a pond, I'm creating a cloud. I'm not trying to attract or stop a shoal of bream. All I want to catch is a few small or large pond fish that will be swimming in the area. I've attracted them. We'll let the ground bait work its magic and get ready to start fishing. Bread punch into the bread, hook in, pulled it out, and there we have the most perfect baits. Remember what I said about trying my best to introduce with my ground bait that whatever bait I've got on my hook, well, you can see quite easily the similarity. The bread that has been punched out in the multi-punch and the bread on my hook. Hopefully the fish won't be able to tell the difference. Let's give them a try. There's a bite now. Gotcha. That's a nice-ish fish. Look at the elastic coming out there now. Bring it back nice and steady. Notice that under no circumstances do I crash the pole around where I'm fishing. One golden rule, always keep the pole well away from the area where you're going to have the float. Right down. What have we got here? That's a nice roach. Yes, very nice. Keep them away from the weeds. Yes, definitely doesn't like being hooked, this one. Good size. You beauty, come here. I didn't know there were good roach like this in this pond. That's the magic of the multi-punch, I suppose. There we are. That's a nice start indeed. First cast as well. Perfect fish, absolutely scale perfect. Nicely lip hooked. I suppose he'd go good, I don't know, 8 to 10 ounces. Not a bad start indeed. Into the net. Nice start. Wipe my hands, reposition the keep net, and hopefully back in business again now. Check everything's okay on the line. Little dab of bread on the hook. Swing it out nice and steady, and we'll push it back to where the fish are dying to be caught. I can actually see a few bubbles coming up where I've put that ground bait. There's quite a few small ones, rather indicate tench more than anything else. Could be carp, but I think the bubbles are a little bit small. The bigger bubbles tend to be carp. Carp are just tiny bubbles, usually indicates a good sized tench grubbing around in the bottom after the ground bait. There we are, smacking the cloud. If that goes again now, I think it's a hold your breath, grit your teeth, and here we go. Bite now. Gotcha. Again, that's another nice fish. Look at that elastic doing its job there now. That looks probably a better fish than the last one. Get it well away from the swim. Now the pole is well away, I can lower it into the water, lay it along the water, bring it back nice and steady. Lift it up, just check. There's the elastic still going out. This is a good fish. Nice and steady, nothing, no heroics. Yes, another nice roach again. These little farmyard ponds are superb, aren't they? Look at that. What a beautiful fish. Well, that's not bad. That's a rod, is it? No, that's a roach rod hybrid. Beautiful red coloration of the fins. Again, nicely lip hooked. I haven't got a very big hand, but I should say that's looking around the 7 to 8 ounce mark. There's another one. Again, move the pole well away from the baited area. Lay it gently on the water. Bring it back. Feed it onto the roller. And pull it through nice and steady. Check the elastic. It's not coming out, so this one I don't think is as big as the others. It's not bad. I wouldn't say no to catching this in a match, especially on the local canal. Good grief, it's bigger than the others. It's starting to fight now. What a lovely roach. Oh, I really must do more of this farm pond fishing. It's better than the local canals by a long way. And of course, you haven't got the steady droning chug of those seafaring cowboys battling up and down. This really is a nice fish for a pond, isn't it? Look at this one here. Good 10 ounces. And naturally enough, I haven't got my disgorger ready. Disgorging. Finest way, put the line in your mouth. Slide the disgorger along the line, pull it out. It's as simple as that. So long as you keep a tight line on the hook, you do not push it deeper into the fish. So pick up the line on the mouth, slide it down the line, little movement, and it's out. And that's the only micro-barb hook, so no problems. Everything's in the way here at the moment. Back into the net. Now after fishing for a couple of hours with something that's 11 metres, what are we talking about there, 35 feet long? You'd think that quite probably I'd be tired now, but no, it couldn't be farther from the truth. When you're using a pole of this length, the secret is to get nice, flat, comfortable position, and then perfect balance. This is easily attained. Lay the rod, lay the pole, down across the knee. Put the weight of your elbow behind it. They could quite easily sit in that position all day. To make life even easier, lift the pole in front of your knee, press down on the pole behind your knee. You've now got a perfect balanced position where, if I can demonstrate, I'm using my little finger on one hand, the third finger on the other hand, and I'm now holding the pole, rest it on the knee, or pivot it on the knee. Life as simple as that. In fact, it's probably less tiring than fishing a river holding a 12 or 13 foot rod in the air, like so, for long periods of time. Another point worth remembering: when both hands are holding the pole steady like this, you're now in a perfect position to strike. Two ways to strike. If a traditional pole float is being used, which means the line is coming from the top of the float through the little eye, then the strike is upwards, like so. It's a simple movement. We're pressing down with the backhand, with the front hand to do the strike, lift, and the whole job is accomplished. If, however, you're fishing the way I am today, with a bottom end only float, this is a Canal Grey, remember, attached at the bottom end only, there's no need to lift. Much better, in fact, to strike sideways. In other words, the tip of the pole moves in an arc along the surface of the water. This is particularly useful when you're fishing canals. The reason being, when you strike into a fish, you do not lift it up into the water, flip it on the surface and spook the shoal. You strike sideways and you move the fish along and away from the shoal. Keep it underwater, the other fish don't even know that it's been hooked, it's just swimming away for all intents and purposes. That's easily accomplished. Instead of lifting, swing gently sideways. As I say that, I actually got a fish on the end then, I didn't do it hard enough. Just my luck. That's the second one I've lost today now. Again, the action is from that resting position there, a gentle movement sideways, watching the elastic come out at all times. For this reason, I only use the white elastic, never black. I can always see the elastic coming out, and I've always got a pointer as to the size of the fish. The bigger the fish, the more elastic that comes out. Not always, mind, but usually. There we have it, a perfect afternoon's fishing. 30, 35 fish, 6.5 pound weight. Total cost, 6 slices of bread, cut up into little pieces, 30 pence worth of ground bait, and that's about the lot really. Maybe a bottle of whiskey for the farmer at Christmas to sweeten him up. There's only one more thing to do. Check around me. No litter, no cans, no polythene bags to affect the cattle. That way I can ensure that the farmer will let me fish again next time, particularly when he gets his bottle of whiskey. Well, that was a nice afternoon's fishing. Sometimes when you're actually fishing, you get a little bit too excited and carried away with what's happening and miss one or two of the more obvious points. So I'll summarise one or two of these things now. First and foremost, obviously the pole itself, the end tip. I've already explained my preference. I like to run the elastic along the outside of the pole through these tiny little eyes, about a yard of elastic, medium strength for most of my normal fishing. If I go to catch bigger fish, then I might step up to a thick elastic. The end, simply tie the elastic round a swivel, slip a bit of silica rubber over it so the end eye is just showing, and I tie my line to that. Simple as that. Now you notice how smooth and free the elastic is. Once everything's set up, I rub a little bit of silicone grease onto the elastic. Everything flows nice and smoothly. I also rub the silicone grease onto the joints of the pole. That way I can ship together, break down, I don't get stuck, and I don't have to take the hacksaw to it as I've seen people do. If I were going to fish it normal flick tip without elastic, connect it a very, very easy way. Piece of rubber with the line through it, wrap it round a dozen, maybe 20 times, push it onto the end of the pole, tighten everything up, and there you are. No fish on earth is going to make that slip. The third, probably the most popular way of doing it, is to have the hollow end of the tip carped by a small PTFE bush. The elastic then runs down the centre of the pole and comes out through the PTFE bush, PTFE being virtually frictionless. The big problem there is you will lose a good 2 feet off the pole. An 11-metre pole isn't much more than 10 metres. Next problem, the weights. You heard me mention olivettes. This is what they are. This is how they come supplied on a piece of wire. That's to make sure the hole stays in the middle and doesn't disappear. Thread it onto the line with a thick end at the bottom. Stop it with a shot. And there you are. You can see the whole thing will slide very, very easily. You can make your own olivette. You don't have to pay the money to fish with an olivette. Here's a simple one I've knocked up. 3 different sizes of shot. Safe weight, large one in the centre, which is a BB, a number 1 either side, and on the outside of that, a number 8 shot. And there you've got very much a cylindrical pattern, if you like. The whole thing will sink very rapidly and will not tangle. Here's a rather interesting way of doing it. This is the safe weight flexible tungsten shot. It's the same density as weight, doesn't affect the environment. There's no problems with the wildlife or the environmentalist. Cut it to length and use it as you would an olivette. It slides up and down. The added advantage of this, of course, if you put a little bit too much weight on, or you want a little bit more of the float or bristle showing, you can bite a piece of it off, and there it actually goes. Simple. And the last way of operating is the safe weight malleable shot. It's a bit like putty, but it hardens up when it hits the water. You shape it like an olivette, slide it up and down the line, and if you want to lighten the load, you want more of your float sticking out, or you want to change floats, stick your thumbnail in it and pull it off. There you are. As simple as that. Mould it into shape, a little bit better than that, and you have another olivette, slightly smaller. Very, very good way. It's getting to be a popular way. Now, bait. You've already seen the multi-punch in operation. For our next shots, we're going to use something a little bit more popular than that, the humble maggot. Lovely creatures. Did you know there are at least 4 different types of maggots? 3 of them can be obtained commercially. There's the standard maggot, which is bred from the blue bottle. There's the pinky, much smaller than a standard maggot. A bit of an escapologist, can get out of maggot tins quite easily. That is bred from the green bottle, and the squat is bred from the normal housefly. The fourth type, which you often hear matchmen talking about, is the gozzer, which comes from a specialised fly, a bit like a blue bottle, but with a dark, matte coloured back. Breed that on fresh meat, but that's another story. Floats. This is the one we've used so far. It's my own Canal Grey, a 2 No. 4, the smallest in the family. Works perfectly well. Not everyone's choice for pole fishing. Here's something a little bit more traditional. A nice, slim pole float. A big fat one. Maybe we'll use these in the next location. One thing to remember on the pole floats, the ones that have the long wire, must always use 2 rubbers. The line will then move from the first rubber, through the second, through the ring, outwards. If you don't use this middle one, and you hook a big fish, this is the action, and that is the result. Your line should always follow the line of the float. Now, one point that I made repeatedly during the first scenes were lift bites, and the second point, of course, on the drop bites. With the aid of these 2 diagrams, I'd like to explain them a little bit more fully. First of all, here is a normal Canal Grey as we would be fishing it. Approximately 1/4 inch of tip showing, locked at the base of the float with the 2 weights, and down the line the 1 telltale shot with the bait just touching the bottom. A normal bite, very simply, picks up the bait, moves along, creates an arc in the line, which in turn pulls the float down. Everyone can recognise that sort of bite quite easily. A lift bite is a little bit different. The fish collects the bait from the bottom, swims higher into the water, as we see here. Therefore, the shot is now lifted, taking the load from the float, which in turn rises probably 1.5 to 2 inches into the water. Strike, you've got yourself a fish. That is a lift bite. On the drop bites, same principle. The bait falls through the water, and instead of going down to the bottom, it is intercepted mid-water by the fish. This in turn prevents this bottom shot from going down to its rightful position. The float stays 2 inches above the surface. If you want to catch fish on the drop, every time you cast in, count the time it takes for the tip of the float to settle on the surface of the water. If, for instance, it takes 5 seconds, and you've got up to 6, you know that a fish has intercepted your bait. Strike. 9 times out of 10, you'll find a fish on the end of the line. It really is as simple as that. Let's see if we can put it into practice again at the second venue. Of course, one of the beauties of fishing is to get out in the countryside with the peace, the tranquility, to be at one with nature. And for this reason, we've chosen this venue. I was going to say, that's not such a good choice. Racing enthusiasts will of course recognise it as Mallory Park. The venue that's seen the likes of Jeff Dew, Mike Harewood, Barry Sheen turning around the track at breakneck speed. Missing, of course, the circuit's most prized asset, this beautiful lake out here. Shallow end to the right, an island in the middle, deep end to the left. Absolute marvellous venue, just brimming over with bream, tench, carp, everything you care to catch. Certainly my favourite water. Of course, it's a little bit too noisy around here. There's too many people around at the moment. I'm going to take a little trip over to the far side of this lake, behind the screen of trees, to a private little lake that we've had dug over the last 2 or 3 years. Again, brimming over with smaller fish, but I'm quite sure it'll be a little bit more peaceful than this. Well, here we are, actually sat on our peg at, as I've already said, my favourite venue in the country, Mallory Park. And the method I've chosen is what I would term fast line fishing. It involves fishing a given length of pole and a similar length of line. The reason being speed, ease of control, and the fact the fish swings straight to hand. Nice, comfortable, easy way of fishing, but only useful at very close range. The rig I've chosen, very similar to the first rig, only this time, instead of the medium elastic, I've tied on a very heavy elastic. The reason being I'll be swinging fish up to 3-4 ounces straight to hand, and I don't want too much play in the elastic. It's always there as a reserve in case I do hook a big fish, but generally speaking it will not be coming into play. The majority of people, again, like to tie the line directly onto the tip of the pole. Not my way of fishing. If I hook a big fish, I want to stand a chance of getting it out. The float I'm using, contrary to most of my beliefs, I've set up a little pole float. Beautiful little specimen. One of the Italian jobs. It appears that most of the best pole floats brought into Britain at the moment coming from Italy. It takes, let me have a look, it says 0.4 grams. I don't know what that is in shot terms, but I have 2 safe weight number 6, one directly below the float to stop it sliding up and down, and one about 18 inches, 2 foot below that, and below that even further, another 18 inches, I have a number 8 shot. The reason being, quite simply, I'm going to fish on the drop. I had a little practice session a couple of days ago just to get the location right, and would you believe it, the lake is absolutely afire with fish, and it's very, very difficult to get a bait down without some tiny roach, skimmer, bream or rod intercepting it, in which case we'll capitalise on that. Because there's so many fish, I'm going to step up the line on the hook a little bit. I've chosen, as always, the Drennan double strength, but instead of my normal canal line of 14 ounces, doesn't help a lot, I'm using £1.5 pounds. It'll enable me to lift 3-4 ounce fish without any problems, and it's only 12-14 ounce diameter anyway. The hook, a little bit bigger than ordinary. This one is a 20s Drennan Carbon Caster, an ideal hook, and I use a little ploy. When I want to swing fish to hand, I want to be fairly quick when it comes to unhooking them. Little pair of the wife's tweezers, taken from the bedroom when she'd finished plucking her eyebrows. A little snip on the hook and a squeeze in the micro-barb. And I've now effectively got a barbless hook. Simple, nice and easy for unhooking fish. The bait we've chosen this time, maggot. These just happen to be coloured. There's so many fish here, it doesn't really matter. If I was fishing a water with less fish, I would probably be using squats and pinkies. In this case, maggots are adequate. Ground bait, as always, a nice fine brown crumb, 75%, 25% of it, my usual Sensas mix. Gives a nice cloud, a nice scent. And the idea now is to put a little cloud in the water each cast, drop in half a dozen maggots each cast, and hopefully bring the fish up into the water to intercept the falling bait. As you can see, the rig, very, very light, nice and simple, nothing complicated. I haven't bothered with olivettes again or style weights. I've kept it as simple as possible, the way I like to do all my fishing. Simply bait up, single maggot. If I want to go for the bigger fish later on, I should probably put a double maggot on. Single maggot on the hook. The line, you will note, doesn't come to the bottom of the pole. The reason being, if I try to swing in a fish 3 ounces, there's going to be a little bit of elastic coming out. The tip of the pole is going to be bending quite a bit, and the fish will finish up somewhere down there. If I have it shorter, however, the fish will finish up nice and comfortable into my chest. Let's start fishing. I've already plumbed the depth, we don't need to go through that again. I'm actually fishing about 6 inches off the bottom. I expect to shallow up as the day wears on and the fish start to take even shallower. You'll notice my keep net is on the right hand side of me. The reason being, I shall be casting on my left. Nice, comfortable, easy movement, overhand. Simple as that. Swing straight to hand. The pole length is approximately 13 foot. What's that? 4 meters? Never taught me meters at school. I'm going to put it in to begin with, get myself a nice little target. Pull the pole back nice and comfortable. Little bit of cloud. Half a dozen maggots. And would you believe, we're in a fish first casting. Good grief, I told you it was good, but I didn't think it was this good. And that's what I call a good start to the day. It's a skimmer, about 5 or 6 ounces. Well, I don't think I've ever timed anything better than that in my whole life. I have cheated a little, to be honest. I've been feeding it for 5 minutes. Not a bad start to the day. Bigger than I thought. Of course, the hook just pulls straight out of the skimmer. Very, very soft-mouthed creatures. That's the reason I didn't lift it. Particularly if they're deeply hooked, just behind the top lip, the hook will pull out very, very easily indeed. You have to be quite gentle with these fish. Another dab of ground bait. This way you're guaranteed the cloud always in the water. There we are on the drop. That's a nice one, a little rod. Beautiful fish, absolutely beautiful. What a gorgeous little specimen. No, unfortunately, a disgorgy fish. Rip the pole between the knees, again, line in the mouth. One movement, back again. Quite easy to build up a rhythm of this when they're feeding at this sort of speed, won't it? Out again. Into the net. One thing I don't like fishing with, as you probably note, are lots and lots of gadgets around me. I can't stand bait trays and things that protrude to catch the line and the hook. I want to be nice and free. Lots of movement. There we are, nothing to catch up on. Except my shirt, of course, which invariably finishes up there during the course of a match. Fish are really starting. Oh my goodness, this is better than Ireland. Back to a bit of skin again now. Straight out. I should imagine it's quite easy to build up a rhythm, 2 or 3 fish a minute. As long as you keep the feed going in, that's the important part of the rhythm. The fish get used to the loose offerings. straight out, comfortable again on the pole, unhook, just a bit of skin, cast out, fish in the net. Now we're starting to get a decent rhythm going. As I was saying before that fish interrupted me, so long as we can keep the feed falling in the water, the fish will start to come up and intercept. I bet you wish it was like this on all the waters in Britain. Without question, this is the way I see fishing going in this country in the future. Another perch. Privately managed waters. They must be landlocked, that way you avoid the problems of pollution seeping in. Well managed. In fact, about once a week, missed that one, about once a week the owners come round, test the water quality. Good heavens, I couldn't even feed there, it went that quick, another rod. Good grief, I missed that one. Very important point you'll notice on that, as I struck, touched the fish slightly, instead of getting into an almighty tangle, swung it back and then swing straight forward into the water. Prevents any kind of tangle, other than a slight loop around the float. We all make mistakes. Sod's law says you do it when the camera's on you. Fortunately, I didn't get into a great bird's nest, and the little darling actually stole my maggot. Try a white one this time, see if it makes any difference. I shouldn't think so, they're now feeding very, very well. Dab a feed, keep the sequence going. I'm now stepping up the number of maggots, throwing in possibly 10 a dozen every casting, bringing the fish higher in the water. Another rod. I don't know what my catch rate is, but I should imagine I could quite easily do 4 or 5 pound an hour of this. 5-hour match, 20 pound of bits is possible. But, as I've already said, we've now got a few slightly more exotic species in the water. Lots of tench, good sized carp, and 20 pound probably wouldn't even be enough in a match. Building up a heck of a rhythm here now. Wouldn't it be marvellous if the canals were like this, instead of having to move your tackle out of the way every 5 minutes to let a boat go through? That's a better one. That's got to be 2 or 3 ounces. Well, catching fish at this speed when you're pleasure fishing tends to be a little bit monotonous. Although after some of the gruelers we suffer on the canals in winter, it's a welcome change, I suppose. What I'm going to do now, put on a bigger hook, put on a 16s, still a carbon caster to the Drennan double strength, 2 pound line. I'm sticking 4 maggots on the hook, and I'm going to try my best to catch one of the tench or carp that live in the water. I think one of the problems here, if I do hook a big fish and it starts to go out towards the middle of the lake, the elastic's not going to take up enough, particularly as there's 5-6 pound carp around. I'm going to have to piece up the rest of my pole, and in the event of hooking a bigger fish, slide the rest of the pole and then I can follow it farther out. I'll take my chance to begin with. I've slipped on 4 maggots. I'm going to stop the feeding. I want to try to deter the little roach from feeding now. We'll see if we can pull in anything a little bit bigger. If this doesn't work, then we're going to have to pop off to the village. Good grief, there it goes. We're going to have to pop off to the village to try and get hold of some sweetcorn. They like the sweetcorn, the tench do, and the carp, and it's about the only way I can think of getting through the 1 to 3 ounce fish. Well, we've managed a little trip to the village. Tin of sweetcorn. Obviously, we've forgotten the tin opener. We've had to bash the end in. We're now going to sort out some of the better quality roach. Still got the 16s on to the 2-pound line. The elastic comes well into play, and I've also pieced together the rest of my pull, situated nicely behind me here. Now if I hook a big fish, I can slide it on. Not going to feed as many as I would if I was using maggots. I'm going to put maybe 6 to 8 grains in per cast. Sweet corn on the hook. Don't bury the hook into the sweet corn. That's a mistake. You bump, lose a lot of fish. Hook it as if it was a maggot and bring the point out. And that's a good sized bait. Although, knowing how contrary these roach are here, I should probably continue catching little fish. Let's see how it goes now. See if I can pull out a couple of good tench, a carp. There's a bite. Oh, what on earth have we got on here? It's one of them little breamies. On the sweet corn. It's certainly got a better stamp of fish now. A bit too big to lift this one. Pretty easy to get in though. They don't battle very hard, these bream. Not like the little carp and tench. Well, that's bigger than the one I got first cast. A little bit better. Not monstrous, it's probably, I don't know, 10, maybe 12 ounces. Nice one. Yeah, there's still a fair few bubbles coming up there yet. I think there's definitely a tench moved in the area. Look at them all around the float, all the way up. Oh, hello. What have we got on here? Oh, that's going to be a bit too big. I think we're going to have to piece up on this one. Got to give myself a little bit more to play with now. This is a better fish. You see the elastic doing its job there now. It's slow, quite ponderous movement this, I would say. It's definitely a tench now. Whatever it is, it certainly doesn't like it up it. Oh dear, I think we might have to put another couple of sections on here. Oh dear, away she goes. Oh, this is definitely a quality fish. Still quite slow. Almost certainly a tench. It hasn't gone out of range yet. I think I would definitely have had a few problems with this fish here if I hadn't have had the elastic on. In fact, I think it's fair to say there's no way in the world I would have ever got this fish out. Man, you haven't got it out yet. In you go. Come to Daddy. Geronimo! At last. God, that's got to be a 2.5, 3 pounder. I think we'll move that well away from the water's edge while I unhook it. That's in a match. I've seen too many people unhooking big fish and have them jump back into the water again. Lightly hooked in the side of the mouth. Beautiful fish.